What's going on, Cam?
Hey Nick,
How you doing, brother?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you doing?
Not too bad, man. It's snowy here. It's getting real snowy again.
Uh, I think it's pretty much done here.
Oh yeah.
There's still snow on the ground, but it it's been a pretty light year. We'll see. It might prove me wrong.
Where are you again, Cam? I know you seem like you're in a mountainous region.
Have you ever been to the Pacific Northwest? Have you been?
Does Utah is that Utah? No.
No. So Washington, Washington, no, Washington, Oregon, Idaho.
Okay, okay.
I
Yeah,
think of that
you
as the Pacific Northwest.
got
Uh,
it.
so I am in the foothills of what is referred to as the Cascade Mountain Range. I'm about mm, not quite 50 miles from Seattle, I think.
Okay.
So yeah, east of Seattle. So there's a Cascade Mountain Range that runs north south up into Canada, and I don't know what its terminal is on the south end, but we got some big volcanoes. So
Nice.
Mount Rainier is part of the chain here. Anyway, so
That's cool.
I'm there's a lot more. I'm right in the foothills, so the marine air comes in and then rises right where my house is, basically. So
Hmm.
it's a lot more precipitation than even you go 11 miles to the west from here, and it's significantly drier.
Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, you are close to Rafe then. Like, I didn't realize how you're like right there by Seattle, right? Isn't that where Rafe is?
Yeah.
Okay. What a unique affordance, right? Cam, you know? A unique affordance for you, brother.
Nice segue.
Yeah. I just use that word all the time now. It just makes the conversation smarter. You know what I mean? It's just immediately.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that. So I pulled up a little language model thing on. Well, first of all, I'm really excited that you're willing to do this with me because I want to introduce you to other people.
Hell yeah, dude. Hell yeah.
So having this recording will serve at least that purpose, and then I also really want to explore the ecological approach with you because
Cool.
you've been really enthusiastic about it.
Hmm.
I've seen you really just light up as you've been going through the discovery process there. So what we probably ought to do is maybe just do a little bit of intros, like who we are, and why we're talking, how we came to know each other, a little bit that we do know each other, and what it is that we think we're doing.
That would be if we could figure that out by the end of this, Cam, I'm telling you that it would be a seminal conversation. It really would.
Uh,
Bro, I just want to say I really appreciate you wanting to do it too. I'm excited to talk to you.
nice. So I can go first. I was raised here in Washington State.
Hmm.
Um,
And are we recording? I can't tell. Oh, we are. Okay, cool. Cool. Just want to make sure. Please continue.
yep. Uh, so I like to characterize myself as a happy kid from Hansville, which is a very small little village, coastal village in the Salish Sea out here, and grew up with tremendous affordances. It was a very rural environment. I had horses to play with, motorcycles to play with, and lots of beach and lots of woods. It took a little bit of travel to get to the mountains, so I didn't do that in early childhood, but that came as I was able to drive pretty rapidly. So got into mountain sports and um, just just a very joyful upbringing and very vigorous play. And then I was homeschooled through sixth grade, so I had a very um, different educational background, I guess. I was basically testing out of 12th grade in sixth grade. So
Whoa.
for like by state standards, the program that I had been in, I wasn't doing the advanced mathematics, but I could have graduated high school basically in sixth grade. So when I went into the public school system, I had not been afforded the opportunity to play socially. So the trade-off relationship there of being raised in a rural environment and getting to play the way that I was able to was that I didn't have a lot of people around to play with. I basically had one friend and a brother and a sister and my friend's sister, and that was about it. So I was kind of starved. And so when I got into the public school system, it was like abundance. Now I got a whole bunch of playmates, and my academics tanked. I think I graduated with a solid 2.0 from high school.
Epic. We're getting the real world education camp.
Yeah. So then I went into the trade. So I built houses for about 10 years in various capacities.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
and then I was raised by an airline pilot, and he along the way he afforded me the opportunity to get my all the way through my flight instructor certificate and commercial ticket. I thought I was going to fly. I thought I was going to follow his footsteps, and then I won't go into the whole backstory, but for various reasons, I didn't do that.
Mhm.
I went into business instead, and I got a CPA license, which has been great for raising a family, like super conservative. And
Mhm.
today I enjoy, um, probably what's a pretty standard information technology. I work for, I won't name names, I guess, but people could look it up if they want. Um, I think of it as an information economy that we live and work in, and I work in a large corporate entity that I do corporate finance ish stuff.
Okay.
And then EMP. So my EMP is the way that you and I came to know each other. I went through, the probably a fairly typical midlife crisis. Mother of my child said, "I'd like you to leave," in,
Solid.
in 2019, and that just really took me to my knees. And on the way back up from that, I encountered Jordan Peterson. He did such a service going through the way he went through Genesis. I don't know if you've seen that, the
Oh man,
last
yeah.
course that he did.
JP was my well, yeah, he did a lot for me in helping me with what I believed at the time. So please, I don't want to disrupt. I'm just vibing with you on that. Continue.
Yeah. Well, so I said that was a key piece along the way because that like I was literally on my knees. Like I was like, I really got some things wrong in life. Where did I miss? It's probably not one place. And his thought process is he just stands on stage in front of a whole bunch of people and basically thinks out loud. Like he's not like and meticulously thinks out loud.
Mm.
And that's essentially what I was finding myself doing with the inventory of my life at that point. So that was very helpful. So then of course the that was I started paying for YouTube Premium, and the algorithms just kept feeding, you just accrete, that's an interesting thing to come back to maybe in the context of the ecological approach, is that little phenomena.
I've just been thinking about that actually, but I don't know on what vein. But yeah, let's come back to it.
Okay. Um, So I'll plant a seed there maybe and say the Mendelbrot plot. So that's the key word, that there's an image that comes to mind in relation to what I was just talking about in
Hmm.
terms of algorithms that feed content based on what you're attending to.
Hmm.
So, okay, so I'm almost done. I'm almost caught up. Somewhere along the line, Peterson is interviewing Rafe. I'm doing dishes, watching that podcast. I had been aware of Rafe and what he had been doing for, I don't know, a couple of years probably, and had been intrigued, but had never taken action to go explore it further. That podcast, like for a lot of people, probably was the catalyst. That night, I basically bought um, uh, the autumn retreat that year, and then I also bought a weekend thing with Kyle down in San Francisco. And then fast forward to it, just that also accretes very rapidly because of the ecology of practices. I believe it's like I was like, oh wow, this is a real deal. And then one opportunity to the other, the opportunity to do the apprenticeship, which is how you and I have come to meet one another. So that apprenticeship program is, what is it, 48 weeks long, something like that? It's almost a year.
Yeah, yeah. What do we have? Do we only have 6 weeks? Do we only have 6 weeks left, or was it 10 or 12? I can't remember. I'm along for the ride. I'm along for the
Yeah.
ride.
So tell me about you. Give me, that was my little bio.
Uh, no, I like that, Cam. I too also was really started to get more serious about what rape or was thinking, wait a minute, what Rafe is doing is like bigger than or it's answering certain questions for me. And it came from that Peterson podcast. So that's interesting. That was another entry point for you. Um, yeah, I would say I grew up in a smaller kind of I grew up in St. Clairsville, Ohio, kind of I don't know, a city, but it was like 5,000 people, kind of a small area, nice area. Um, uh, I grew up in a smaller Christian school. Then I went to public school around sixth grade, so the interesting overlap there between
Oh yeah.
yeah, interesting overlap there. We grew up outside a lot. Our parents were always pushing us, get outside, get outside. We'd hide inside and play video games as much as we could, but often when we were outside, we were climbing trees or riding dirt bikes or ramping our bikes or playing paintball. We had like 22 acres, so we had a good place to play when we were younger. That was
Yeah.
great. And then since I was young too, my sister was an artist, so we would draw a lot. We were inspired by her, and just my grandmother was an artist. She would show us her drawings. She painted things on the walls. So there was always that inner play between liking to be physical and drawing, which is what I still continue to do both of those things or do more crafty artistic stuff. Um, and then I got my visual arts and graphic design degree at Shawnee, played soccer, got into CrossFit, was following just lots of different threads of how to train and like when something as influential as CrossFit hits the scene, you're kind of you get lost in the sauce, but in retrospect, you think like the only thing, like it's so influential. Peterson said this before. It's so influential that all that people know now is its flaws, like Freud or something. You know what I mean? He literally
Oh,
came up with the subconscious, like Freud basically invented the subconscious, but now all we remember is him like being like over fixated on sexuality or something. You know what I mean?
well, so I've never really thought about that before. So that's say that again. How did you say that?
Peterson, I heard Peterson say once that when something is influential enough, all we see is its flaws in retrospect. Like we don't realize how it's kind of just laid the ground for like Christianity in the West or something. You know what I mean? The Christ ethic is like love your neighbor is like the ethic. It's like the number one thing. But
Yeah.
all we know is all we're like, don't talk to me about that Jesus guy. People used to do that when I was younger, and it's traumatizing now, I get it. I get it. But um anyway, yeah, got into CrossFit, went deep down that rabbit hole, brother. I mean, I was reading the journal, I was watching the games, knew all the athletes, was training really hard, was training multiple times a day. And being a bigger person, like I'm not built for it. Like CrossFitters are like 5'10" or 5'8" optimally and like, 185 pounds or something. Or in between 225, 100, something like that. They've got to get the repetitions in. You know what I mean? They've got to cycle through those movements. So
Yeah.
tall guys typically aren't like the great build for it, but it did build interesting skills for me and interesting capacity that stays with me surprisingly. Like cardiovascularly speaking.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was always exploring because certain I don't know, I'm high openness, high enthusiasm. Like, have you ever taken Peterson's Big Five thing? Okay, dope. That's dope, dude. Yeah, I think I'm like 96th percentile. So out of 100 people in a room, I'm like, there's only four people that are more enthusiastic than me. And then if there's 100 people in the room, there's only like three or four people that are more open than me. So I'm also high conscientiousness. So high conscientiousness, high openness is like a weird conflicting thing.
Yes.
Like like if you're really open and generate a lot of ideas, but then you're like like trying
I
to
gotta, I
delineate
gotta take
between
carbon
everyone, you know what I'm
dioxide.
saying? You could see the tortured nature of it, but
You don't seem any worse to wear though. You
no,
seem like okay.
no, it's cool. It's cool. There were certain roadblocks that presented for me that really were tough for me, like belief, specifically like belief, like knowing the truth and my growing up in a certain kind of evangelicalism and stuff. But but fast forward, what really pulled me in with Rafe is like me and my buddies, we were experimenting all the time with like who's gonna put the pieces together. Like we see certain the way certain people lift weights, maybe in CrossFit or maybe people do I don't know, we were experimenting with a bunch of different fitness routines basically. And
Yeah.
but who's gonna pull knees over toes guy, West Side 531, anything West Side is the conjugate system, CrossFit stuff, running. We were just either experimenting with these different modalities and we're like, but who's gonna put the pieces together and finally like kind of take this meta game approach where
Yeah.
all of these things are missing something. And then it's not that Rafe has perfectly synthesized all that. It's just the metagame thing. Like what we're looking for is something with the most meaning in the way we move. And like that idea was like it immediately clicked. I'm like, okay, let me see what this guy's about because he's touching right on the thing. He's touching right on the thing that the reason why we move and that it's got to be connected to something bigger, that all these things have the potential to help us transform, but they don't necessarily. It's got to be oriented at the right thing. And yeah, so that really made a lot of sense to me and it drew me right in. And I'm glad I have the opportunity to work with Rafe and you guys. So um, that's I
Yeah.
might have skipped a few things there, but that's where I'm at so far, man. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
Well, maybe just to cap it off, what are you doing presently? Like, what's
Right.
your
Right.
day like now?
Visual arts, graphic design. I freelance for a couple of different companies that do class gowns and rings in schools, and they open a graphics portion of their business so that they can basically do sports teams, memorabilia, and banners for schools. We work like with like 100 different schools in Ohio doing that. And I do pick up graphic design work on the side. I'll paint for people. Me and my dad will do house rehab stuff. Like we just did some hardwood flooring over the weekend in my cousin's new house. Um, so I'm a little bit of a jack of all trades. I'm trying to learn more of the physical. You said you were in you said you were in carpentry for 10 years. Is that what it was?
Yeah, so when I think I was about 8 years old and I had visions of building my own home someday, like building my own
Wow.
house from the ground up with my own hands.
Wow.
And I had the opportunity in the high school that I attended, they had a vocational program where the local Rotary would buy a piece of property in a subdivision. And then
Uh-huh.
the shop teacher was a general contractor. So the wood shop teacher, Mr. Greer is his name. He took, I think it was 12 of us, and we would spend half our school day for the senior year building a house. So we would basically
Mm.
walk down the street from high school to the subdivision and build a house from the ground up. It was awesome. It was an awesome experience. And then
Cheers.
coming out of that, I just basically went, I did mostly framing.
Hmm.
I spent a couple of years doing foundations.
Yep.
So flat work and then as well and footings and foundation walls.
Yep.
And then I just kind of started doing uh whatever. It was a pretty eclectic experience. Basically, I was trying to gather experience into my body in terms so that I could build. Um,
Right. Right.
so
Yeah,
yeah,
that's cool. That's was my dad's path. He would say more by vice than virtue, but but yeah, he's a very good builder. He's a good builder. He's just a general knowledge, just uh how to any part of a house, any plumbing, electrical work. He's just a good jack of all trades with those things. And reworking. Okay, so I worked with him once. This is interesting, Cam. Maybe uh you have a son, or do you have more children than that, Cam?
just what I have just a son. That's
Awesome.
it. Yeah,
Awesome. Yeah. Well, you might relate to some of this. Like I worked with my father once, and at that time I'm like, I'm just using this to get by to do things I want to do or whatever. But
yeah,
another time, well, coming around a second time, I've collected some life experience. I've gotten to work and do some of the things that I've wanted to do, and just the opportunity arose to help him with this house. And like now that I'm working with him, I'm like, man, this guy knows a lot of stuff. Holy cow. He's actually like kind of a genius at some of these things.
yeah,
Like these are just intelligences that if you don't spend time with a person that has that, like literally the dexterity, Cam. You know what I'm talking about? Like the dexterity with tools and stuff.
I do.
And when we're doing the floor work, everything is, I'm watching these patterns, him moving on the ground. He's like in
Yeah,
his 60s, you know,
yeah,
him moving on the ground, but he's adept at it and he's smooth. And
yeah.
I'm like, this is just fascinating. I'm just the whole time probably intellectualizing it too much, but it's really fun to watch and I like it. But
Yeah. Yeah, that so what that brings to mind, I remember on one of the framing crews when I first started working with him, there was this tall, lanky, uh he was I think he was probably Norwegian,
mhm,
was his ethnic background, but it was wild to watch him because he was like you said moving smoothly, but he was blowing everybody else away.
mhm, mhm.
Like that and he was I'm pretty sure he was in his 60s.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
he just learned like he's been doing it his whole life. Um,
Hmm.
and it's just it's pattern motor patterns.
Yeah, that collecting the knowledge in your body thing that you were talking about, just collecting experience. It just when someone's just saturated with it, that yeah, they're not thinking. Their body's just really smart to that stuff. I don't know, like high level wrestlers or something. You know what I mean?
I do, yeah. And that was out of the so maybe we come to the maybe some of the particulars of the ecological approach. So
Yeah.
one of the things there. So I just ran a quick query just for talking points yesterday.
Nice. Nice.
Uh,
Yeah, I was writing a little bit this morning, just trying to collect my thoughts. So we've done our homework, Cam. Let's get after it, dude.
yeah. Well, you've been through how much of Vervaeke stuff have you been through at this point?
Well, I actually don't have the book on my desk. It's downstairs at the table, but that Awakening from the Meaning Crisis book. Uh,
That's in two
it,
volumes, isn't it?
it is. It is, yes.
Second one
So
out pretty
I'm very familiar with the first volume. I'm actually doing my second read through, but I've probably watched it a couple times. I've watched it
yeah.
a couple times. I can grip on to the written material really well because I can sit and like write it. Sometimes my attention, even though Vervaeke's fun to watch, sometimes my attention goes in and out with the watching. But so I'm familiar with the first 25 episodes, and then that's like the historical
Yeah.
taxonomy of meaning, right? And then the second 25 is what he proposes basically for rebuilding some of these essential, meaningful parts of our lives, right? Uh,
Yeah. Okay, so you and I need to be careful because we both are very open and we'll go down all kinds of
Right.
pig trails or whatever metaphor you want. So
Yeah. What time do we have, Cam? What time do we have till? I'll put a reference on it.
so I well we're doing an apprenticeship call this morning, right? At standard time, or
I
is
I've got to run, unfortunately, but I'm
okay.
good till 11. I'll go till then or 10:30 or whatever you want to do.
So
I'm
I
sad
think
to
I
miss
run.
that.
Let's aim to close at quarter to the hour. So we have
Okay.
what time is it now? So we've got basically an hour and 15 minutes to go.
We can do some damage in that time.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
So uh, let me gather my thoughts here.
Please. You asked me how far I'd been through for Vakey. What about you?
So I have been through every single one of those lectures
Mm,
at least twice, and some of them quite a few more times than twice. And we're wrapping up two fellows that I met at the San Francisco EMP thing. So that was my first experience with EMP was with Kyle Koch in San Francisco, coming up on 3 years ago now, I think. Might be
sounds like
wrong.
a good first experience.
Yeah, so there were two fellows, Anurag and Michael, and Anurag uh, wanted to go through uh, basically like a book club style thing.
Yeah.
So the three of us have been recording dialogues on them, basically like study group style, and he's been posting them up on his YouTube channel. So
Wow.
we're I think Thursday this week will be the conclusion of that. So it's taken us over a year to go
Wow.
through the whole series again together. So I think that's like the third time, close to the third time that I've been through it myself.
Holy cow. I didn't know you were such a student of that, Cam. That's awesome.
Well, yeah. So that's another one. Vervaeke has done such a service there in basically laying out
Yeah.
it's like the developmental arc of Western philosophical thought.
Yeah, I mean it's great. The man is some of these men like we have access to them now because of the technology, but like Peterson and Peugeot and Vervaeke, they will be like
Yeah.
someone's carving their head into stone right now as we speak, you know what I'm saying?
No, they're going to get built out in like manifold Minecraft
You're
universe.
right. Yeah, you're right.
They
Someone's got
probably
the
are.
Minecraft developed
They're,
right now.
what's that?
Someone's got the Minecraft Mount Rushmore developed right now. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be fun to see how they do stand out because I agree. Like they're the different phenomena in the contemporary technology. So this thing that you and I are doing right now, this capacity to basically, this is another thing that I would love to explore and learn how to talk about with you is we're creating an artifact right now.
yeah, yeah.
And that, who knows how long that artifact, like who knows
Right.
how long that lives on and who's exposed to it in what circumstances.
Correct. It is weird to think about.
So then, uh, so the luminaries. So I don't know if you ever go walk around in cemeteries. So there's a practice for you.
I do. There's a really big one. The big one for Portsmouth is right at the bottom of my hill, so I do often.
Yeah, so that's all that helps put things in perspective. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm enjoying the artifices
Hmm.
in a very real way, moment to moment of way more people that I can comprehend. It's
Yeah.
like all of these bodies that have come and gone, and they've all left some kind of mark. And
Yep.
my experience is that it's by and large it's beautiful. Like it's
Hmm.
just such an exquisite for me life to be born into and enjoy.
Wow, that's really
And then
complicated.
there's the luminaries. There's the guys that uh, it's that Pareto principle. It's
Mm,
like those who not everybody's got their peculiarities. Like and some people are really peculiar, and that affords an outsized impact in the artifice, in the creation of the artificials, if that makes sense.
it
So
does.
those are the ones that this somehow relates to what you were saying about how you only see the flaws. It's like
Mhm.
relief. That's how I'm thinking about it now. It's like if you have something solid and it's underneath a substrate and then you sandblast that sucker, what over time the hard part, the real rock, is
Mhm.
exposed. And
Mhm.
that's how I'm watching that happen. It feels like with the likes of Vervaeke and Peugeot and Kelly for that matter,
Yeah.
where these particular characters are peculiar
Hmm.
in ways that are in ways that scale across time, across circumstance.
Yeah.
They present character in a way that is timeless in some sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree. I completely agree. And maybe it's because they're getting at you would know this, but it's probably because they're putting their finger on the thing that's like most meaningful at the time. That's like maybe they are just like Peterson, for instance, Peterson's interest in the Bible or whatever, and Peterson saying, like, Peterson's interest in the Bible is just because of the perennial patterns, wouldn't you say? Like the interest is there because this is how Peterson explains it. I don't know if you watched any of that, and this is gonna circle to the ecological, I promise, okay?
Okay.
All right. Uh Peterson's interest in the Bible is the perennial patterns, and the one way he explains this is with Moses when he makes the Ten Commandments. Okay, basically, what Moses finds is the invariant principles. That's invariants are a part of the ecological approach. But what he finds are the invariant principles. He sits down and he judges 10,000 Israelites.
Yeah.
Hey, like literally one at a time. Like you and I sit down, I'm Moses, you're whatever. Not that you can be Moses if you want, it don't
No,
matter.
I would prefer
What?
that you.
Okay, right. Well, I gave myself that role by accident. I don't think I actually want that. But Moses anyway is like it's these two Israelites are arguing with each other, they took this or he didn't give me that on time or whatever. And Moses tells him, okay, no, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. And he does that with 10,000 people, just sends 10,000 people. So many that Aaron's like, his brothers, like, you gotta break or divide this up. You gotta kind of delegate some of this
Yeah.
conflict resolution to other people in the tribe because you're getting run down. You can't do it. Well, he goes through that process, then he goes up on the mountain and way Peterson describes it, it's like bang, oh my God, these are the things. Like this is what I need to tell the people. Here is the distilled 10 things or whatever. This is a crude version, but 10 things that these people need to know in order to solve these disputes more handedly, more efficiently and whatever. And the thing that was the most interesting to me about that is for some reason just in the way it was framed when I was younger, not blaming anyone, just the way that was in the cultural waters was like God gives us a decree and it's right because he says it's right, not because it's part of the higher good. You know what I mean? Not
Yeah.
because the good arises and it's like it's not that. This is how I think of it now. God literally is good, capital G, good. You know what I mean? How could it be any other way? It's the highest value. It's the highest value. It like the whole way I framed it, problem formulation. What is that number 20, episode 26 or 27?
Yeah.
Problem formulation, I thought it was like it's arbitrarily good and you have to get in line with that or you go to the bad place. That's like a horrible way to frame it because then God's just the mean kid on the anthill or whatever. You know what I mean? Uh,
Yep.
all this, the bottom up, the ecological is the bottom up. And what's so powerful about what Peugeot and Vervaeke and Peterson are doing is they're pointing that out. They're
Yeah.
pointing that out. The old terms have lost their meaning of belief and I don't know, the way we were framing the problem for a while in the cultural conversation was just unhelpful and it was painful, and divisive. So I'm so excited that what's been helping me is going ground up,
Yeah.
with everything. Like Peterson would call himself an existentialist, and in some ways he's scattered. He's like the jazz musician, he's got his shit figured out. He clearly does because of his influence, and he does his things the way he does them. But oh man, I was gonna say something on a thread.
Jazz musician is a good,
Oh,
really, really good metaphor.
yeah, right, right. If you've ever seen him in person, he's even more startling. Like the camera doesn't capture it.
Yeah.
It's like he's almost dancing when he's
Yeah.
talking, and he's spinning off. He's dancing basically. It's
Yeah.
it's kind of intense. You
It
know,
is.
he feels like almost dangerous when you
He
see
is
him in person.
dangerous.
You know, he is dangerous. Yeah. What else could it be? But um, yeah, one thing that Peterson said on this thread that really helped me was um, like you might not ever know what absolute truth is. You might not, which is the complete opposite of what I was told and what I thought you needed
Hmm.
when I was younger. Because fundamentalism basically is just you hold the line and at least you know who's in and who's out.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Which is
That's
not nothing.
very clarifying. It's very clarifying. But the sacrifice is I don't know, maybe the potential for the most realness or the most authenticness or something like that.
I think about it as you're precluding yourself from the affordances that are available, that are in fact available and good within that part that's out.
Right, right, right. You're throwing out the baby with the bathwater, maybe, and or something like that. I don't know.
Well, for some, like at some point, it feels like I come to that moment. I come to that place. I want to be careful here to not get too far afield, but
It's all
I
good.
do want to give grace. Like I want to offer. I have to decide. Like I have to exclude as I go through the day. It's like
Yes.
I only got so much attention to expend today,
Yeah.
and there may be things that you and I can do together that would be really good.
Yeah.
However, I got these other things over here that for whatever reason the mind over here is saying do those instead. So I got to ignore you.
Yep. Hmm.
So that's how I experience that with the you referred to it as fundamentalism, who's in and who's out. Uh, it's a really good way to describe it, I think.
Hmm. Hmm.
Anyway, well, I interrupted you. I didn't want to get too.
It's cool. I appreciate you reeling me in here along the way.
So can we come? Go ahead.
The ground up, Cam. That's
Yeah.
where I'm going. The ecological is ground up, and it's something you can get a grip on because you can do the thing in front of you, and you can start finding the invariant principles, and it translates in lots of ways in your training, in your training, and in your daily life. You can start putting the pieces together to make the wheel.
Yeah, I looked at that the image that you put together. You sent me a text message. It took me to one of your Substack pages.
Yeah, yeah.
You were talking about you were giving the example of the wheel,
Hmm. Yeah,
the
for
axle
vacues.
in the wheel, and you related it to the shoulder, and it's like if you're out of socket,
Hmm.
as you move, it gets worse. It's like you're
Yep.
damaging the system.
Hmm.
However, there's things that you can do.
Yeah. And that's all Vervaeke's language. That's his analogy too. It's he literally, he says that's what suffering is like the Buddhist wheel. The Buddhists say that suffering is the broken wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's well, that was very clarifying in terms of problem formulation of what I felt like was not working in my life, you know? Um yeah. Yeah. So continue.
Uh, so I want to go way back in our
Mhm.
dialogue, and I wanted to pick up on this idea of direct perception. So I'm reading from this. I'll send this over to you. I should have sent it ahead of time, but this is
No
the
big deal.
author of Claude AI 3.5 Sonnet. So there's
Okay.
the proper attribution. I had said, what is, I think I just said, what's the ecological approach? Just so I'd have some prompts.
Yeah.
So one of the key aspects, how we do in time. So we still got an hour. Maybe I'll just read this out.
Please
This will
do.
take me like a minute or two. So
Sounds
the
great.
ecological approach is a theoretical framework in psychology and related fields that emphasizes understanding behavior and development by examining the interaction between individuals and their environment. This perspective was primarily developed by psychologist James Gibson and later expanded by others. Key aspects of the ecological approach include: one, person to environment interaction. The central focus is on how organisms interact with and adapt to their environments. Rather than studying individuals or
Mm.
environments in isolation, the approach examines their dynamic relationships. Two, affordances. Gibson introduces the concept of affordances, properties of the environment that provide opportunities for action. For example, a flat surface affords walking, while a handle affords grasping. Three, direct perception. The approach suggests that organisms directly perceive meaningful information from their environment without need for extensive mental processing or representation. That's the one that I wanted to come back to in relation to how your observation of your dad operating in the trades.
Mhm.
Four, natural context. Behavior should be studied in natural, real world contexts rather than artificial laboratory settings, as ecological validity is crucial for understanding true behavioral patterns. Five, systems perspective. The approach views development and behavior as emerging from complex systems of interrelated factors, including physical, social, cultural, and historical elements. That's interesting that it doesn't break out religion as its own category there.
Mm.
This approach has influenced multiple fields, including developmental psychology through Bronfenbrenner's bioecological systems theory, design and human computer interactions through the application of affordances, environmental psychology in studying how physical environments affect behavior, educational psychology in understanding learning contexts, sports science in analyzing movement and skill acquisition. The ecological approach continues to be relevant today, particularly in understanding how humans adapt to and interact with their physical and social environments, including technological environments. So let's go to the direct perception to start, if you're willing.
Yeah.
So that said, so direct perception.
Mhm.
The ecological approach suggests that organisms, like you and me,
Mhm.
directly perceive meaningful information from their environment without need for extensive mental processing or representation.
I like that.
And that, when I read that right now, it reminds me, I think it was in uh, part of the assigned reading out of here, which I should say that out loud, I suppose. This is Dexterity and its Development uh, by Nikolai Bernstein.
Mhm.
So in there, I think that's what brought to my attention the fact if I may be so bold to
Try it
call
out. See how it feels, Kim. Try it
the,
out.
the fact that at some point in the evolutionary development of the creature that stands here before this camera,
Mhm.
the motor programs were actually within the spinal column itself.
Mm.
And then somewhere along the line of the evolutionary development, there's a gap in the sense that motor functions are now, you know, I think, I don't know, but I've been told like somewhere here central, there's a motor cortex in here.
Okay. Going deep. Going
And
deep. I like it.
what's that?
I said you're going deep. I like it.
So the point being that there's a time delay between observation of affordance,
Mhm.
jar, pick up the jar, and the action. And the time delay has to do with, what did you call them a little while ago? The things that are not
Invariant.
the
In-
invariants. So
Yeah.
there's invariants. We don't get to know if it's actually possible to go faster than whatever the apparent speed limit in the universe is, speed of light. Don't need to. Close enough.
Yeah.
So that, but the point is that we can, as creatures, we've developed the capacity to extend our perceptual processes to notice that there's actually a time delay, because there has to be an electrical current. There's a communication that's happening between, you know, the digital, the grasping apparatus, and the much of the storage of the motor program that is picking up the jar.
Mm. Hmm.
So in what that means is now I can think about it before I act. That
Yeah.
thinking is not very long
Hmm.
for like one simple motor action, because it's happening at however fast. I'm imagining that it's happening at whatever the actual speed of electrical, whatever that waveform is. I'm assuming that that is a waveform. So you following what I'm saying? Like there's a distance between my hand
Yeah.
and the motor program that's here.
Right. Right. Okay.
For in waking state consciousness, it's for all practical purposes zero. It's
Yeah.
imperceptible.
Yeah.
However, I am afforded instrumentation that demonstrates to me in no uncertain terms that there's actually a gap there in
Hmm.
time.
Hmm.
Oh, well, so then I start to think about more complex patterns. It's like maybe I can't control it for the simple patterns, but I'm not a very simple creature.
Hmm.
When you start to think about, okay, what are the consequences in concert of all of the actions that I'm going to go through today, including the speaking of words with you?
Hmm.
Oh, well, I can maybe adjust. Um, I can make like compounding effect of that time delay. I can make use of it, if that
Hmm.
makes any sense.
Hmm.
It affords greater agency
Mm. I
in the
never
sense
thought
that,
about it like that before. Never thought about it like that.
okay, so then the direct perception is has to do with something like, through the way that I'm understanding it, and I can relate to your observation of your father, because I do have that experience. When I go use power tools,
Hmm.
or a hammer for that matter, my body just knows what to do. Like I can probably still drive a 16 penny vinyl sinker in two, no more than three blows
Yep.
reliably.
Yep.
I can also pick up a worm drive skill saw, and I can just zip through. I can do a whole bunch of things really fast without thinking about it. And that's a really dangerous instrument. Like if somebody who hadn't been through that experience picked up one of those things and tried to keep pace with me, like they'd probably be losing fingers and things like that. And the other thing that I noticed is that it's fun in the sense that I feel joy in my body as I'm grasping these tools and building materials and making an artifice.
And it's fun. Would you say it's fun because of that agency you're talking about? Like the yeah, for a person that's less dexterous with that tool, it's not going to be as fun because they I don't know, it doesn't afford them the same thing as it does you.
So the afford okay, so let's
We can put a pin in that if you want.
yeah, let's see if we can. I want to answer that. I want to explore that. I don't feel like we've exhausted the direct perception.
Please do. Continue.
So it's subconscious. So the
Hmm.
rote practice, and this really gets to the heart of what I think Kelly is doing,
Okay.
where not all movements are as generalizable. Like if you're selecting how you're going to spend your time practicing moving,
Right.
they're not equal in terms of utility across domains.
Hmm. Hmm.
Not to me, that's really one of the core, if not the core value of the EMP ecology.
Yeah.
I think Rafe really, when you say put your finger on it, I think that that's really probably it
Yeah.
in the EMP ecology. It's like, hey, it doesn't seem like it's a big deal. It's actually a huge deal.
Hmm.
What movements do you put your body through on a daily basis?
Right. Right. Yeah, I really appreciate that particular observation. And I picked up on the same thread. I would say that what's difficult is say you were trying to you know, it takes many different interventions to convince someone of that, basically. But what worked for me was that exhausting several different local games, exhausting several different and coming to the end of them and being like, well, how much better can I really get at this thing and why? Why would I con like I'm not going to be a professional soccer player or a professional CrossFitter or a professional whatever. You know, I'm so what are the point of these games and um what was the point of learning them? And you know what I'm saying? Like it was just that continual approach and frustration, not because I was enlightened suddenly or anything, but just because I came to the end of the local game and I'm like, there's got to be more to this exercise and moving stuff that I like, and I've had great experience, transformative experiences in these games, but it's not the end point. And so when someone gave me a framework that put it in the context of meaning and local games for the meta game, and all of them have the potential to transform, but they don't necessarily. You got to be oriented to the right thing. All that put me in the right headspace to make sense of it. So that's the only problem is that people have to go through that kind of local game thing. They have to have an entry point, you know, um, to find they have to go through this situation, this situation, this situation, this situation to find the invariant thing. Um, I don't know how that relates to direct perception, but I was just picking up on what you said about what Rafe is doing that I
Well,
like.
the point, I guess the point of the direct perception is like, I'm going to pick up a lot of cups in my life, for example. Like I'm making a pretty gross
Hmm.
demonstration here, but that has very high utility across, well, I could say every single day of my life.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, okay, sure. Hmm.
okay. So I'm also, well, it's true that a little while ago, I said I'm not a simple creature.
Hmm.
Well, it's also true to say that fundamentally, I'm a real simple creature.
In
Like,
function, in
yeah,
function, right?
yeah. Like I need whatever. What do we burn? Like 6,000 calories or something a day.
Sure. Hmm.
Like I'm a low wattage general problem solver. I don't need to do hardly anything. Like, so let's be clear. Like I don't need hardly anything at all to live.
Yeah.
I'm I've often kind of half jokingly said to people in my professional life when things are getting rough, like we're playing like it's a really serious game, whatever it is that we're doing,
Yeah.
and like, wait a minute, you guys, there's no need to get worked up about this. I can put on like a diaper and go sit in a cave and be
Yeah.
perfectly happy for the rest of my life, probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've had the opportunity to do some practices where I realize that, oh, I can probably just sit still and watch Mother Nature do her thing, and I'm gonna be pretty content.
Well, that's a great
I need a
touch.
few calories. I need a little bit of shelter, fresh air. Okay,
Hmm.
so I think I've made the point. It's like I'm a very simple creature in the sense that I don't really need fundamentally very much at all to be perfectly happy.
Yeah.
Um, and it's also true that I'm afforded the opportunity to play in like super artificial. Like my dad demonstrated this. That guy, for his professional life, he would go get in a giant aluminum tube with several hundred people, wings full of kerosene, and blast the whole thing off of the surface of the planet, take it from this continent over to another continent on the other side of the biggest ocean on the planet.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
big thing.
Right.
We're just going to do this today, guys.
When you put it that way.
Yeah, don't need to do that, but it's kind of fun.
Right. Right. Right.
Okay, so what was the point? So the direct perception. So the point is that certain movements and certain progressions, certain what it's not taxonomy, what's the word? Certain families. Rafe's got the vocabulary. I wish kind
You're
of
doing
embarrassed
good.
myself
You're
right
doing
now
good,
that I
man.
don't have them. It's like you can do that in a methodological manner. You can develop your motor skills
Mhm.
in ways that open up affordances over the course of your life
Yeah.
in
Mhm.
different ways. And it's easy in the contemporary context to get distracted by the hyper specialized skill sets, because in a particular domain, if you want to explore deeply there, you gotta.
Yeah. Yep.
uh but what that necessarily precludes though is other capacities, and that's true for everything. So being aware, I guess, that certain progressions of motor actions
Hmm.
are more, we use that term, donorability. It's like
Yeah.
they scale across domains, they're applicable across multiple domains. um, so the value proposition for an EMP coach is that I can bring to you, dear human being, dear athlete, student, whatever, however that relationship manifests, I can bring your attention to that particular fact and then start to help you build into your practice the awareness of that, so that you become that. How does Vervaeke refer to it? You become that autopoetic, increasingly, uh, the
That's a
development
great.
of your personal agency compounds. It's something like that. It's like I can help you do that in one of the most foundational ways, movement of your body.
Wow, that's a great way to put it, Cam. I've never really thought about the proposition, the value proposition in that way, but that's powerful, man. Yeah, I'd say that tracks right.
um, okay, so I guess to close on the direct perception, it's like I'm not thinking about how to pick up this cup anymore. I haven't thought about it since I was probably like 4 years old.
Yeah.
That we think we see a thing, a cup, the point of direct perception is no, that's not really what you're seeing. What you're seeing is something like the manifold possibilities that you by which you can actually grip the grip it,
Hmm.
be in closer, and here's where the meaning comes from, the closer intimate relationship with the fabric of reality. This is simply another part of the tapestry here,
Hmm.
and this body is in direct physical contact with it,
Hmm.
or not. I set it down, but that's the direct perception is something like not not so much here imagistically,
Hmm.
but the body knows that cup
Yeah.
in all of the ways that it can be in relation with that cup. And then
Hmm.
there's this spontaneous, it's delightful. That's the thing. It's like when the attention starts to come to that, it's like, oh, the whole world becomes dear.
Yeah. Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. And so the development of the various motor patterns, that being the example. Here you can pick up a cup, you can put it to your lips. There's the simple ones that everybody's going to get as a consequence of having to keep their body alive.
Hmm.
That's the part where I'm saying that's not very far into the progression at all. That's pretty simple. So then when you start to scale from there, how is it that you're scaling that? How intelligently are you choosing or being guided in the development of them? Because there's way more.
Yeah.
There's immediately where that's the computational combinatorial explosiveness that Vervaeke talks about.
Yep.
How are you navigating?
Hmm.
Well, hopefully, wisely, intelligently.
Hmm.
So that's where the game gets really, the meta game gets really interesting, because then once one realizes that that's the case,
Hmm.
and you start to ponder, it's like, okay, well, what I'm part of, this body is part of the ecology. Oh, what is it affording the rest of the ecology? Oh, and then that engenders a particular moral progression, is how I experience that.
Right. Hmm. Yeah, well, didn't Akshay just the other day be like, well, Rafe, how are you by what measures are you choosing these local games or whatever, or what value system are you choosing these local games by? He was asking that fundamental question, the more almost a moral question. It's like, how do you know where to start and what gives you the most transfer or whatever? Fair question.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. Actually, he asks really good
He
questions.
does, he does. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you for letting me run the course on direct perception. I've been kind of dominating here, and I want to listen to you a little bit. So I'll pause. Or is there any particular thread you want to pick up on or expand on?
Well, let me pick up on that for just a moment, because what's reminded me of, and Cam, that you have certain interests that are filling in my definitions of these things just because I don't approach them the same way. Like when you started talking about this gap right here, I'm like, oh shoot, we're going deep on something I wouldn't even think about. But where it hits me practically with direct perception is in the jujitsu world. And man, this is coming up a lot. And there's certain people are talking past each other about what it means and stuff. But all the ecological what the ecological approach is really good at, especially with the direct perception stuff, is that jujitsu, since it's a thinking, it's kind of like it's an art of war. It really is. Helio Gracie fought bigger opponents and use leverage and brain and strategy and deception to beat his opponents. So there's elaborate architecture around that, like how to play. They have 5 rules of engagement. To get one stripe on your white belt, basically you got to learn like 30 techniques. It's very elaborate and it's intellectually dense. And
Yeah,
so to tell people, hey, actually your body can self-organize around a task and pick up way more skills faster this way. If you do it this way, it's like completely sacrosanct. And I don't get ideological about either one, but I have noticed that when I bring in the grappling foundations class in the morning and someone hasn't learned anything, and I tell them, hey, okay, pretend this is the quarterback. This part of my body is the quarterback, and you got to get past the offensive line. You got to fight through the offensive line to grab around the quarterback. Like they get way more adept at getting a body lock around you, getting to your hips,
Yeah.
and being able to take you down than if I would say, okay, well, you could start by grabbing the wrist, then grab the arm, then grab the shoulder, and make sure your stance is good low, and don't let me go for your arm and shoulder and legs. You see what I'm saying?
I think so. So
Yeah.
let me try to quickly summarize that.
Yeah.
Essentially, you used a I heard you use a metaphor of a very recognizable pattern, a
Yes.
cultural phenomena. So there's a quarterback. So you invoke like a particular agent arena relationship that is broadly understood and very dynamic.
That's awesome. Yes. And because that's in our for some reason that's in our body already in our cultural language like the more I present jujitsu like that, the faster people learn and the more they do behaviors that are like whoa how like they don't even know what they're doing they literally in technical terms don't know what they're doing but they're organizing and it's like oh hey you just that was a really cool arm drag to back take or whatever we never gone over that, or even leg locking or stuff that's obscure that's basically just in the jujitsu world. They're doing behaviors that are like toe holds or like heel hooks, but no one's ever taught them that. They just know to hold one part of the leg still and twist another part. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So that you said in the direct perception definition that I really liked. Like we don't need elaborate, what was it, elaborate mental models or elaborate rep
Without need for extensive mental processing or representation.
correct, because it's like picking up the cup. We know
Yeah.
wrestling's as old as people have been wrestling before Jesus Christ walked the earth. I mean, uh it's in there somehow, and it's just a matter of setting up the constraints right so that they
Yeah.
can achieve the task. Um, So that's what I was really sparking with on the direct perception thing there, Cam. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that does. As one more inspiration to go dedicate some time to jujitsu. It keeps coming up.
Yeah,
Uh,
hey, bro, you got
my
to
back.
find the right people, Cam. You're the coach, man. You got to find the right people. You got to trust those people. You got to feel like they're trying to build you up. You know what I mean? Because there's many different gyms and many different
Yeah,
approaches. You know what I'm saying? It's the Wild West right now.
interesting.
Yep. Yep.
Uh, yeah, I did. It seemed like that's something that came up over the course of my life. It's like it wasn't even hardly a thing.
Mm.
My background is in Aikido. That was when I
Yeah.
dedicated. So I dedicated about close to 2 years of
Wow.
my life to that particular practice. It was super routine for about 9 months. I was living in a dojo.
Whoa. Well, tell me if it doesn't segue too far. Let's see, we've got 35 minutes. Can you tell me just what you liked about that, Cam? Because I can see certain overlaps.
Overlaps with jujitsu.
Yes, and the softness and going with the pressure, going
Yeah.
with, you know what I'm saying?
What did I like about it? That's a good question. I mean, most simply, I just like the way it felt. Like it just felt good
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
both grip and be gripped.
Hmm.
Um, and I really like the dynamism of it. Uh,
Good break falls.
big movements. So there's really big dynamic. It's beautiful. Like when they put with the guys when they're wearing the skirts,
Hmm.
like talk about artistic demonstration.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous to watch.
Hmm.
And it's also really fun to get thrown through the air and to land and to realize that it's not that big a deal. Like um, it's freeing, it's liberating to realize that, yeah, that you can take a full on break fall. First of all, that's such a so I grew up riding motorcycles and I fell off of a lot of motorcycles at speed.
Jesus.
Probably not recommended in terms of the way to learn how to fall, but learned how
There
to
you are.
fall.
Yeah. Yep.
Uh, so then to move into that hyper contrived, so I learned to ride in the woods, probably similar to you.
Hmm. Hmm.
Now go on to a canvas mat, go into a hyper contrived environment that's designed to allow you to learn how to fall with. So there's constraints, I suppose. That's
Yeah.
there's your control of constraints. I was so thrilled to learn how to take a full break fall.
Mm.
Um, so I really, because that scaled. I guess the point that I'm making there is that that's probably a good demonstration of a scalable. So like the thing with the cup,
Yeah.
EMP ecology. What do you learn how to do? Fall.
Right. Right.
Guess what? I love how Kyle says they play the game. I remember them being introduced to the game of the ground, and he'll say things as like, "Notice the ground. The ground is your friend. The ground is always going to be there for you."
I love it, man. I love it.
So learn to be in relation with the ground. And
Mhm.
then so then how exuberantly can you be in relation with the ground? How joyfully? And a breakfall is a very joyful expression if you know what you're doing.
Yeah. That's a great way to put it too.
So Aikido, I guess I really like the falls, and then I also really liked the sense of control, like the immediate sense of control. Rafe kind of spoke a little bit about this yesterday, I think.
Hmm.
Um, he talked about um, how everything after a session of practicing martial arts, everything else in life felt like less threatening.
For sure.
And I mean, there's three basic joint locks in Aikido. They're not hard.
Mm.
They're very powerful.
Hmm.
Like if I get a hold of your, if you afford me the opportunity to get a hold of your arm,
There are ways to do it. It's structure, function, organization, Cam.
yeah. So that was it makes you feel powerful. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, this is something that's always available. Like practically everybody's got hands and arms,
Yep. Hmm.
and I know how to relate to those now in a way that is, well, it's powerful.
Hmm.
So I'm less concerned about who you are and what you might do.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
I like that a lot. So that's probably a good enough answer.
That's great, man. Yeah.
So you said, what's the overlaps that you were talking about?
Well, I'd say the softness. Um, Yeah, going with the fight of the opponent, knowing when to retreat in advance. Even like sometimes we'll do one game I play with people that are like brand new for break falling is like I push you, you push me, and when we get pushed, we fall over. We just go with the flow.
Yeah,
I get used to them basically just I try to regulate them to people like trying to move them or control them and them trying to do the same to me without any end goal in mind other than just get used to this sensation. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
And it's fun, man. And sometimes I'll grab an arm and pull it across their body. I'm like, wait a minute. 'Cause they'll roll with it. like this is I think I've seen this before somewhere. There are interesting overlaps, so I'm happy to have a space to do that as well. It's changed my life totally. Changed my life just in how I feel about myself and how I can be helpful to other people in all seriousness and how teaching people. It's been a beautiful thing. Teaching kids.
Okay. So I want to settle down a little bit because
Yes, sir.
I get really enthusiastic about those forms of play. And I want to come back to uh, developing an articulation of the ecological approach in service to others who are uh, whose interest is peaking, so to speak,
Mm.
um, about it.
Mhm.
And I want to come to an image. Let me see if I can land this image for you.
Yeah.
Well, we can go back to the wheel. The wheel is a pretty good metaphor.
Awesome.
Um, maybe we can develop that further into a spherical
Hmm.
image. We'll see. But if you think about the spokes, the different loads on a wheel. So to me, it seems like the ecological approach. So there's dynamism. You and I are dynamic creatures. We're continually playing with balance. Like right now, I'm balancing on 2 feet, suspended between heaven and earth, we say, in this field of gravity, gently held by Mother Earth. And so what maintains the balance? Many things, more things than I can possibly consciously be aware of. So if I take balance from the literal, just balance this spinal column on top of this pelvis, on top of these, I'm also suspended within this civilizational thing going on.
Mhm.
It seems pretty imbalanced. Water's running, electricity's on. Um, so what is it that keeps that in balance? Does it require any tuning, so to speak? And for me personally, the answer is yes, obviously.
Mhm.
And where I want to go here is from like the wooden wagon wheel conceptualization, I could say, which is a relatively simple conceptualization. There's only a few axes on there.
It's only one wheel. It's a single wheel, right? There could be
Well,
multiple.
let's just stick with one though, because where I want
Yeah.
to go is to the wire strung spoked wheel. So like
Mm.
the I've got a BMX bike downstairs where though the wheels on that bicycle, they've got way more
Mhm.
little wire spokes.
Yep.
And that's affording a dynamism. Uh, but if it gets out of balance, the system breaks down pretty fast. It's like if you lose the right ones or they get loose or whatever, the wheel starts to deform, and then it comes back to that as the system, the bicycle, the whole thing is moving through whatever the environment is, it starts to come apart pretty fast.
Sam,
So
hold on. Hold on 1 second. You were talking about the many spokes on the wheel. It was.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So those to me are akin to practices. So the anchors, so to speak, of the spokes. It's like what is your ecology of practices? Like how many options do you have to absorb force, so to speak? So
Mhm.
what's the word that we use for how resilient? How resilient is the system of practice?
Mm, mm, mhm.
So that is, if I speak in ecological terms, that is careful cultivation of a robust ecology.
Have you ever heard Vervaeke talk about the efficiency resiliency trade-off?
Yes.
That idea sticks with me a lot. And even I hope this tracks here, but one thing I think about is this thing called the doorman fallacy. Have you ever heard of this example? It's about the efficiency resiliency trade-off. And it's like this. Okay, the doorman at your favorite hotel gets replaced with an automatic door.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, okay, well that's great. We don't have to pay the doorman. It'll open perfectly. I don't know, it's futuristic, whatever. But what people didn't know that the doorman did was he made relationships with people. He contributed to the economy. He was actually kind of like a little bit of theft prevention because he was just paying attention. He was another person paying attention. So even though the system becomes more streamlined, hey, we have this money that we used to pay him to do whatever, or maybe it was just getting tips or whatever. Now the system's a little bit less robust. There's one less piece in it that was doing all the things a cognitive agent would do, or something to think about, you know. As we remove the doorman, we have to be to streamline things, we have to be careful or just at least aware of what that other problems that might present, you know?
So you said like a really key word in there for me, and you said it in a way that I love to harass people about.
Go for it. I'm resilient.
So it's that you said attention.
Yes. Yep. That's been like let's see. Word of the day for me for the last 6 months.
Nice. So you said something like, or maybe exactly, he was just paying attention.
Mm, mm.
And the
Just.
reason that I like to harass people about that is I'm like, what do you mean just?
Yeah. Yep. Attention turns to be. I was just let's see, episode 26 I was going through with Vervaeke. It turns out we can like our attention somehow precludes what it's doing is like framing in and precluding an enormous amount of information at all times, right? Is it doing something like that?
What it feels like. So it seems like. It's like so the capacity to attend.
Mm-hmm.
So there's here's where I want to go with this.
Yeah.
So I just sounds dismissive to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's it is only by some miraculous grace that I'm able to pay any attention whatsoever to anything. And
Mm-hmm.
it's astonishing to me that I actually have the capacity to attend, pay attention to you. Uh, and I say grace because it seems pretty prevalent for people to take that for granted.
Mm-hmm.
You have to in order to function throughout the day. But bringing attention itself back to the fact that it's not a trivial thing at all.
No.
So there's that. And then the other thing this has been a huge learning for me in my life, and it has to do with quality of attention.
Mm-hmm.
So I've made I'll just straight up characterize it as an error, is that I've considered attention generic.
Yeah. Yep.
And and unidirectional.
Mm,
And I don't think that that's correct anymore. So I think that there's actually a quality to the attention that I'm paying to you that is emanating. So here we go, ground up through me, through this body, through whatever I am.
mhm,
And the agent here does exercise some modicum of agency over that quality. Is that making sense?
mhm, definitely. Well, the what you're saying about it not being unidirectional or generic, I'm I'm you know, yes, I'm highlighting that part of the conversation because I
So I would love for you to elaborate on that because, like I said, like I've been in error for most of my life, I think. So I've felt like it's just neutral, basically. And
yeah.
I'm saying now, oh, why I think I got that wrong.
Well, I've noticed to pick up on that, I've noticed just how my life has gotten better just even the last year by maybe not even that long, 6 months, 6 months to a year by the quality of attention I pay to things. And it I don't think it was out of any hmm, let me say this. The thing that has stuck with me the most from Vervaeke so far is just these constant analogies from the Buddha. Like in the very first chapter of the book, he talks about how there's this serious renewed interest in Buddhism and mindfulness and cognitive science and how these things are overlapping. But what sticks out with me the most is when they at when Vervaeke and his um you know what's the word, sage life way, he talks about how they'd ask the Buddha, "Are you a god?" They'd see him
Yeah.
sitting there. "Are you a god?" And he'd say, "No." "Are you a man?" Or "Are you an angel?" "No." "Are you a man?" "No." "Well, what are you?" "I'm awake."
Yeah.
And I think that is literally like a parable of awareness, like of not in some like not even in some woo sense, but not having the instrument turned too tight where he's ascetic and you can see the spine through his belly, or not having it turned too loose where he's just drowning in the pleasures of the world, but somewhere right in the middle where the quality of his attention made him mythological, you know?
Yeah.
And okay, well, I'm not the Buddha, but I see the power of that analogy
Yeah.
ready to hand, man. Um because paying attention to cleaning the kitchen. Why is, um or I step over the or the door handle's squeaky, or the thing that holds the toilet paper is like has been crooked forever or whatever. And I just keep passing it. And suddenly I'm like, why does my life feel like it's in disarray? And then I start paying attention to this and that and this and that. And when all those things start snapping together, it's like just so relieving. It's so
Yeah.
relieving when you start fixing the broken wheel. That's why attention has been so on my mind. Um, I can't remember exactly what the original question was. I'm sorry, but that's what
Well,
attention is to me right now. It's directly making my life better. It's making me suffer less. My head does not feel as cluttered. I feel more confident in myself. All that. It's interesting how much it adds up, you know? I don't feel as split. I feel just like better tuned and more relaxed, you know?
yeah, that was beautiful.
Hell yeah.
Uh,
Did you have a similar experience, Cam? Or what are you talking about the quality of your attention? Why has that stood out to you recently?
um, So we've got only a few minutes remaining to play. So
Play how you want. Pick the game.
so what seems like, what feels like, what is probably most helpful, what's most fruitful here
Hmm.
is to pick up on, you just gave a beautiful expression of how quality of attention, you gave testimony that you've noticed that your own quality of attention has relieved your own sense of suffering. Is that
Yes. Yep.
right?
That's exactly right.
And I was also given testimony that I have, I believe, misunderstood attention in the sense that I've understood it as neutral, as in it's just occurring and I don't really exercise any agency. It doesn't matter how I feel
Hmm.
while experiencing the consequences of the processes of perception, which is a fancy way of saying what I'm noticing, what I'm attending.
Hmm.
So there's the thing, there's the objectification, and then there's the subjective. There's the feeling associated in the moment with that. And my error, I think, has been in dismissing the sense in my body of what I feel, assuming that it doesn't matter how I feel when I perceive the toilet paper roll off kilter or whatever,
Yeah.
or that's a very simple, not very intense experience. The same principle applies when I'm before another person. I'm trying to think of a present. I don't have any present examples that are particularly good, but people are the most complex and can be those can be the most powerfully. People tend to evoke sensation in my body more
Yeah.
than any other feature of reality.
That seems consistent with the human experience, definitely.
Uh, so then what is the idea, the thought, the possibility that I can actually start to modify, I want to say control. And we'll see, this might be an error. So
Mhm.
I'm at the edge of my capability right now. Like I don't really know if what I'm saying is true. So
Just
this is
try.
a beautiful place to end it for purposes of today, and then maybe we pick it back up another time.
I feel like that's where it's leading. Good stuff, Kim. Continue.
So I want to go to a joint. So that same way where I can say, okay, I can control the body before me by engaging it in close communion in this particular way. So I can take an aggression or a perceived threat and I can essentially neutralize it
Hmm.
through application of a particular grip. Okay, so now the thought there is, can I do the same thing with that complex of sensations in my body coupled with the story, the combination of those being what I understand to be emotion.
Hmm.
So if I notice an emotional response in the presence, through emotional response as a consequence of paying attention to any other person. So the ones that feel good, where the constellation of sensations are pleasurable, I guess. A loved one, we say. If I'm in the
Hmm.
presence of a loved one in an affectionate circumstance, that's easy.
Yeah.
If I'm in the presence of one where it's not that, it's like the opposite of that, whatever you want to call that,
Yeah.
what does the capacity to actually change the emotional state within my own body, have on the nature of the relationship that I'm actually participating in that moment.
Mm, mm, mhm,
So that's the essentially I'm saying I am doing quality control upon my own attention that I am disposing of on said other person, other body.
mm. Oh my God, what you're describing. Well, have you did you come across that word from Vervaeke, sensibility transcendence?
I don't remember that. I'll go look for that.
Okay, well, this is what he's describing. Somehow, if you're have you ever had he uses this example, you're talking to your uh I don't know, let's just imagine a mother-in-law or something, right? Someone
Okay.
that's family that you're kind of connected to, but you kind of like you don't know if you like them. They kind of agitate you in some ways. Maybe they're really direct. They just tell you things and you're like, well, like I actually like to wear this. I don't know why you would insult that. It's not your business or whatever. I like this shirt, something like that. But then you get to know them a little bit better. Maybe you go on vacation with them and something switches where you're like, oh my gosh, they aren't trying to be mean. They're just really honest. They're a really honest person. And wow, they're actually pretty good at a few of these things. That they're like they're the reason why we were able to go on this vacation because they had their finances in a certain way that they this is the way they give. They just don't know how to express it. That's called sensibility transcendence, where you go from because of the way you're seeing the work you've done to see and pay attention to things differently, you go from this person is rude and says things that just are not very nice to I was actually seeing them the wrong way. And I'm seeing the good in them now, you know?
Yeah. So
Uh,
sensibility transcendence.
yeah, yeah. It's kind of interesting. Like you're able to see different sides of a person, or um, maybe that's just empathy. Vervaeke also says empathy is a learned skill. It's like Rafe was talking about the example of you take off the glasses. Oh, I'm seeing through glasses. Well, empathy is you are good at perspectively taking people's glasses and putting them on and coming alongside them, being like, I can see why you're seeing things this way now.
Yeah,
Mhm.
which is real. That's really real. Like their perceptual processes are what their perceptual processes are. And
Right.
the glasses are a beautiful metaphor for that.
Sure. Sure. And so how is this tying into what you were saying about um Uh, shoot, I'm sorry. I was trying to comment on what you were saying, Cam, but I feel like I'm losing the thread here, bub. I'm trying stuff too. Forgive me.
So we should come to a conclusion here, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, so the affordances, it seems to me, is the place to the concept of affordances.
Hmm.
So, and we're talking about the manipulation of one's own emotional state.
Hmm.
That's what I'm talking about anyway. And you offered, um, you afforded me. There we go. You just now afforded me. I'm going to speak in complete sentences shortly. So
I see.
you and I are part of a real ecology.
Hmm.
You and I are something like centers of gravity within that ecology. You and I have both been woken up to, so to speak, or are now aware of at some point, that the selection of practices matters a lot. Fundamentally, it matters what we how any body progresses through their developmental arc from the ground up.
Hmm.
And we've also noticed that we are in fact more or less effective facilitators of that process for every other body that we come in contact with. As in, we offer greater or lesser affordances. So case in point, you just offered me an affordance
Mm.
through a particular vocabulary in a particular uh, not discipline. I'll say methodology. That's also not very good. But you said in you called attention to a particular luminary, John Vervaeke. You said here's its sensibility transcendence. There's your clues. You're basically painting the developmental path for me, or shining a light on it, so to speak. You're highlighting it for me.
Of something you already knew or were picking up on, like of the way you relate to a loved one versus the way you relate to the person you're in conflict with, maybe. And I don't know if you asked this directly, but what came to mind was how do I tune that right? How do I tune myself right to respond to that in a good way or something, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great place to close it.
Sounds good, bro.
All right, Nick, appreciate it a lot. We'll talk to you
Hey,
soon.
hey, have a good day, Cam. Thank you. We'll do this again, brother.
All right. Bye bye.